It's time for another Dice Tower review with John Richard.
Howdy gamers, greetings from Indianapolis, Indiana, the gaming capital of the world. It's time for another board game review with me, Indiana John. Today we're taking a look at Pandemic: The Cure, which is the dice game version of the wildly popular cooperative game Pandemic. Now, Pandemic is a hugely popular game. As a matter of fact, on the Dice Tower People's Choice, Pandemic is currently the #1 game. And with good reason, too. It's a fantastic cooperative game. Now, this is basically just the same kind of game where you're trying to rid the world of diseases and cure diseases and help to save humanity. But this is in a dice game format. And so, let's take a look at the setup and gameplay of Pandemic: The Cure and see if we can answer the most important question in gaming, which is it fun? So this is the setup for Pandemic: The Cure. The board consists of a series of discs that represent regions of the world. So instead of having a board with a map on it, you're going to have these discs that represent the different regions. In this game, the bad infection cubes that are in the board game are actually going to be dice. And so there's 4 different colors of dice. And each of the regions also has a number on it that corresponds to a roll on a 6-sided die. And the 6-sided dice for these infections in the game, for the different diseases, are not standard 6-sided dice. And actually the distribution is marked on the side of the region discs there. So you can see that, for example, a yellow die has 2 faces that are 5s, 2 faces that are 2s, and 1 face that is a 4. And the 6th face of any of the infection dice is always a plus sign, which whenever that gets rolled, you're going to put those into the CDC, which you'll use a little bit later for event cards. We'll talk about that in a second. So you set the game up by pulling 12 infection dice out of this very nice blue cloth bag and roll them up and put them onto the regions. If you get any pluses to start off with, you're going to re-roll those to make sure there are 12 dice on the board. Each player is going to get their own pawn, as well as a roll card and a set of custom dice that go along with their roll. And so you'll select a start player, and then you will begin. Oh, I should also mention this part in the middle here. This is the 2 main tracks that you keep track of in the game. There is a infection rate track and an outbreak track. And so these are going to be slowly ticking down as bad things happen during the game. And if you ever get to this skull and crossbones here, then you lose the game. Like many cooperative games, there are multiple ways to lose Pandemic: The Cure, and only one way to win, which is to cure all 4 diseases. So you'll select a start player, and then they'll begin. Now, the way the player turn works in Pandemic: The Cure is the active player is going to take their custom dice and is going to roll them. And I've chosen the generalist here because they're pretty general as far as their die faces. Now, the rule in Pandemic: The Cure is that you can re-roll your dice as many times as you want until you get the faces that you like, with this one caveat. If you ever roll this biohazard symbol, then that die is locked and you can't use it anymore, and it pretty much has to be set aside for the remainder of the turn. Also, for every biohazard symbol that you roll, you have to take this peg here on the infection track and move it up 1 space for every biohazard symbol. And that's bad because that will increase the infection rate slowly over time. And when you cross these lines here to go into where the little explosion symbol is, that will cause epidemics, which we'll talk about in a second. But aside from that, you can re-roll these as many times as you want. So there are 2 faces of the dice that deal with movement. There is the airplane, which will allow you to move your pawn to any other region on the board. And the other way for movement is the boat, which will allow you to only move to an adjacent location from where you are. So that's movement. The little syringe or needle symbol is for treatment of the disease. And the way that you treat disease in this game is, let's say that I moved here, and I can use one of these dice to either move an infection die from the region into this area in the middle, which is called the treatment center. Or I can use a die to take an infection die that's already in the treatment center and put it back into the bag. And I'll show you in a second why you might want to do that. But that's the way the treatment works. There are some special abilities like the medic who can treat multiple times, but for 1 syringe, it's 1 die per syringe. Now, the other thing that's pertinent is to the game is the sample bottle, which is the way that we're going to cure these diseases, the way that we're actually going to find a cure for them. If you have a sample bottle, you can use that die to collect a sample out of the treatment center of a particular color, and you're going to place that onto your roll card. And the reason why you want to do this, you want to collect as many samples as possible because that'll make it easier for you to find a cure. After you have rolled all of your dice, if you happen to be in the same location as another player and you want to give them your samples, you can do that and you'll just transfer those samples to their roll card. Now, what exactly are you trying to do with the samples here? Well, if you're able to collect multiple samples, let's say that I've collected 4 samples of blue, then the next step in your turn is you can try to find a cure for the disease. And what you do when you find a cure is you're going to take all of the samples that you have collected and you're going to roll all of those dice. And then in order to cure a disease, you have to roll at least a 13 on the sample dice that you rolled. And in this case, unfortunately, I only rolled a 12, so I did not cure the disease this time. The pluses don't count for anything. If I had, for example, cured the disease like that, then you're going to take one of the dice from your samples and you're going to put it on this track to show that you have cured that disease. And then all of the rest of the dice that are on your samples, any dice that are in any other player's samples, and any dice of that color that are in the treatment center all get picked up and get put back into the bag. In this game, there is no eradication, so the diseases will always be there, and people are still infecting each other even though the disease is cured. But if you have cured a disease, it makes it a lot easier to treat. So for example, if I had 3 blue dice here and this disease has been cured, when you go into this region, you can use 1 syringe to take all of the dice of that color and put them in the treatment center, or you can use 1 syringe to take all of the dice of that color from the treatment center back into the bag. So it makes it a lot easier to treat the disease once it's cured. If you fail to cure the disease, like I just did a minute ago, then you basically just keep those dice locked up as samples and you get to try again on your next turn. So it's a good thing to have lots of samples, but if you don't get a cure for the disease, it's going to reduce the number of actions that you can take on your turn. So then the last step of a player's turn after you try to find a cure is the unfortunate infection step, which is the bad things that happen in the game. You're going to look at the infection track here and look at the number of dice for the infection rate. You're going to pull that number of dice out of the bag. You're going to roll them, and then you're going to place them onto the board. Any pluses that get rolled are going to go to the CDC. Let's talk about the CDC for a second. The way that works is that this will be sort of a pool of money that you can use as a team to purchase these event cards at any time during the game. And these event cards do a lot of good things. They might cause the infection step to get skipped. It might make it easier to transfer samples to one another. Might be able to allow you to move people around or move dice around. So they're all good things, and you'll have to decide as a team how exactly you want to spend your money from the CDC to buy those events. There's a whole deck of them, so if you buy one, then it's just going to go at the bottom of the deck and you'll draw another one. And then these dice here that you spend will go back into the ubiquitous blue bag to be unfortunately pulled out and rolled again at a later time. So let me talk about the 2 main ways that you can lose this game, and that is by this infection rate track going here and then this outbreak track going to here. So we have to talk for a second about epidemics. If someone rolls a biohazard symbol and it causes this peg to go to the next region, I'll lift that up there so you can see a little better. See, there's like different sort of areas of green. When it reaches this area with the little explosion, that's going to cause an epidemic. What you're going to do in that case is you're going to look at the infection rate of the new area, and then you're going to take that many dice out of the bag, and then you're also going to take any dice that are in the treatment center, and there could be a bunch in there. You're going to pull all of those out and roll them all together and put all of those dice back onto the board. So that could be a devastating thing. And that could cause outbreaks. So let's say I rolled those 3 dice there because we didn't have any in the treatment center. So I'm going to place those onto the board. That goes there, that goes there. This one goes here. An outbreak occurs whenever there are more than 3 dice of a particular color in a region. So in this case, now we have 4 yellow dice, so that is an outbreak. You have to take and move this track up to the next space on the outbreak track. And then you're going to take all the dice that are in excess of 3, in this case there's just 1, and you're going to move it 1 space to the right, or in the clockwise. When you put these on the board, you'll start at 1 and kind of go around to check for outbreaks. But by doing that, if there happened to have been a bunch of yellow dice already there, you could trigger another outbreak, and then it just sort of cascades around. So this can build up really quickly. If you get to 8 outbreaks, that's the end of the game for you. And again, if this goes all the way to the end, again, a loss for you. But if you're able to work together real hard, use your special abilities on your player roll cards, and get some lucky die rolls, if you are able to cure all 4 diseases before any of those losing conditions, you will be the winners of Pandemic the Cure. Pandemic the Cure is a game for 2 to 5 players, but there are 7 unique roles to choose from in the game. And the board game also has unique roles with special abilities, but Pandemic the Cure also comes with unique custom dice for each player, and the distribution of the faces is different, and some of the special abilities will have special die faces that'll have those special abilities on them. So I just wanted to go over the different special abilities for each of these cards real quickly. The Generalist gets 7 dice instead of 5 dice, and the first biohazard symbol that you roll each turn, you don't have to advance the infection rate syringe for that particular one, so that's kind of a neat thing. The Medic is the super treatment guy, so he has 2 special die faces, the double syringe and the triple syringe, that will allow him to treat 2 times or 3 times with a single die face. The Containment Specialist is a great guy to move around the board if you have a lot of dice of particular colors, like if you have 2 or 3 dice. Because whenever he enters a region that has 2 or more dice of a particular color, he's going to take one of those dice and put it into the treatment center. Plus, he has a special die face that will allow him to put up to 3 dice from the treatment center back into the infection bag. So he can help with those epidemics so that they don't get too many dice in that treatment bag. The Scientist is really good at curing diseases, so whenever they roll for a cure for the disease, they add +2, so they only need an 11 to cure a disease. The Dispatcher is good at moving people around, and so during the Dispatcher's turn, he can move people around to any other region for free, and also has a special die face with a helicopter on it that will allow him to move multiple players from one region to another, kind of like an airlift sort of a thing. The Researcher is really good at distributing samples, so she can give samples to any other player in other regions for free at any time. So it's good for her to maybe collect samples and then distribute them to other players. That can be a real good cooperative thing to do. And then the Contingency Planner is a card, is a role where he has a special die face with a cross on it, which will allow him to spend one of those to turn one of the infection dice in a region or in the treatment center to money, the cross, and put it into the CDC. So he can generate some money for those CDC actions. So that is the 7 unique roles in this game, and that's one of the really interesting features of Pandemic the Cure. So that is Pandemic the Cure. What do I think of this game? I love this game, and I actually think I like this game better than Pandemic the board game, and I like Pandemic the board game quite a bit. But for me, I'm just a dice person. I love to roll dice. That's one of my favorite things to do in a game, and this game is all about rolling dice, and yet it still has the same kind of strategic depth and tension of a cooperative game that the regular Pandemic has. Of course, it's also designed by Matt Leacock, who designed the original board game, so he was able to pack that same kind of idea and tension into Pandemic the Cure. The components are top-notch. They're all custom dice. Each player gets their own custom set of dice, like I mentioned, so that is a lot of fun. The roll cards are very good at just explaining what the special abilities are, and so it's not real difficult once you get your dice to know what you have the ability to do on your turn. I think this game, it's been mentioned before by other reviewers, that this game is pretty good at taking care of the alpha gamer mechanic and alpha gamer problem that exists with other cooperative games where one person sort of figures the puzzle out and takes over the whole game. Now here you have your own dice. You control whether you're going to re-roll those dice and push your luck to get better results or possibly get more of those biohazard symbols. So you have a lot more control in this game. But I love everything about this game, and I especially like the fact that it plays in usually 30 to 45 minutes tops, and I think that's great. I think 30 to 45 minutes, up to an hour, is just a great time frame for a game. I might be saying saying that because my game nights that I usually go to last about 3 hours, and I'd like to get 2 or 3 games in, so this game length really works for that. But I think it works with anybody who's played Pandemic will be able to pick this up really quickly, and I also think it's a real easy one to teach to new players who haven't experienced cooperative games. So highly, highly recommend this game. The answer to is it fun? This is a phenomenally fun game, and I would definitely recommend it. Pandemic: The Cure.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.